Hey folks, this is BlackCross here with a discussion video that I wanted to do. And like I said, I've been wanting to do a discussion video every week, whatever piques my interest, that is. And really, to be honest, I figured since it's been a week since the Tokyo Game Show has went through, I figured we're going ahead and do an analyst video of the Bloodborne DLC, The Old Hunters. So after looking at the trailer dozens of times, I've decided to go on ahead and try to do an analyst video. But if there is anything that I might have missed out, please do mention it in the comments below. But until then, let's just go ahead and get started with the analyst video. So the first thing we'll notice is that obviously it's going to be a completely different area altogether. But where in Yharnam it is located at, I'm guessing it's somewhere located within the backwoods of the Forbidden Forest. I'm guessing. As to why that's there, I don't know. The next scene we'll see what looks like hands, but these hands are more or less attached to the amygdalas that stands all throughout Yharnam. I think there's like three. No. Besides Yarkle, there's like a whole bunch of them, but I think there's like two. Yeah, there are two of them within Yharnam before you actually encounter the main Amygdala one. But the Amygdalas all loom around within Yharnam, so obviously there's going to be one within the DLC pack. Either that or there's something we get to do about them, I'm not sure. But the next scene is where it gets interesting. As you can see, this next scene, obviously this is basically statues hovering around what looks like a skeletal remains. But what's actually interesting is the fact of what it represents, in my opinion. So let's first go ahead and take a closer look at these statues. The first one that's holding the book, I'm guessing that's a text of like the old blood or something, I'm not sure. But I'm guessing it has something to do with like blood rituals or whatever. The other statue on the other side with the bell, I'm guessing that has something to do with the Bell Maidens, but it doesn't have a dagger. It just holds a bell, which tells me they're more or less trying to resurrect the dead body that's laying on the pedestal. And then right in the middle, I'm guessing that's the priest, because the other two statues more or less have hoods, but he has what looks like a little pope hat. And I'm guessing they're conjuring up somebody from the dead. I'm guessing, I'm not quite sure. But the reason why I say this is interesting, because I'm guessing this is a clue that tells us we're going back in time from before Yharnam actually fell into this calamity, and more or less find out more about like the blood healing church, the blood ministry, the other hunters for that matter. I mean, the whole lore behind Yharnam is actually kind of interesting, especially if you take the time to look it up and everything. But again, I'm guessing this scene tells me that we're going to find out more about the blood healing church. That's just from what I'm seeing from this scene anyway. So obviously we get our title right here, but immediately after the title though, we get another scene, in which case it looks like Yharnam itself, Central Yharnam. But what kind of gets me irked is that we're looking at a different perspective. I say a different perspective because take a look at the background within the sunrise or sunset, if you want to look at it. What's interesting to me is that the cloud formation is kind of resembling that of We'll go back to it later on, but it kind of resembles what we will be seeing later on. I'm not sure if that's foretelling of what's going to happen, or if this is a different location altogether. For all we know, it could be Yharnam. It looks different from what I'm used to seeing. And then of course we have another location. This time it actually resembles that of the area that's in the choir church, where you fought against the Sential emissary. But what's different is that we have what looks like wilting sunflowers, and then we got a couple of people whose heads are wrapped in bandages. I'm guessing that's what it is. I'm not quite sure. But I'm guessing, like I said, this is another clue that indicates that we're going back in time to before the calamity, and we're going to find out more as to what came about. So it looks interesting. It kind of tells me that we are going back. But the next scene, I don't know why this scene is here, but I'm guessing this scene is here to kind of let us know when we can access the DLC portion of the game. In other words, after you defeat Rom, the Falkia Spider, after you activate the scene in which the Blood Moon appears, everything changes around the area. So in other words, by the time we get to that part of the game, we can then access the DLC. I'm guessing anyway. This next scene, though, is where I start to kind of have iffy thoughts about it, and I may be wrong on a couple of things. Like I said, if I missed something, please let me know. But after looking at this thing a couple of times, at first I thought I was looking at like a new possible character that we will encounter within the game. But as a closer look, we can actually see that they are actually regular enemies. It looks like regular enemies of Yharnam, sort of like how in the beginning portions of the game, all of the citizens have kind of went into a berserk mode type deal and have basically rallied together in order to attack you as a player. But what's actually interesting about these enemies is that each of them holds a hunter weapon of some sort. And all three of them are basically new hunter weapons that you will attain throughout the DLC, but they all hold hunter weapons. So in other words, these aren't just regular enemies. These are actually hunter enemies that have gone into berserk and are becoming beasts themselves. Which is actually interesting, but at the same time is kind of creepy, because that means things are going to get harder. This is actually the first of many scenes that we will see where we feature a new weapon. And in this case, this weapon shows what looks like a mace, but as he shoves it down his back, it shows like a saw hammer, sort of like a spinny saw. I'm going to call it a saw hammer for right now. But as we can tell from this scene, obviously there are two key factors besides the weapon itself. One of them is that we can see that our hunter character is more or less wearing a different outfit altogether. And then of course we got ourselves a new area that we're appearing in. So that's an interesting thing right there. This scene though, this scene is what got me the most. This scene right here. Now, obviously we're in the same area where we were at the beginning of the trailer, but with a different perspective as well as a different look. I say a different look because if you'll look at this character right here as he moves along, it's very, very, very close resembles that of Gammon. The color textures as well as the weapon form that he's holding it in, it's very much likely that Gammon is going to be a character we get to interact, which is also another indication that tells me that we are also going back in time. Once again, another clue, which that's interesting, which means we're going back in time to before Gammon becomes a dreamlike essence, and before even the hunter's dream is even conjured up. So we get to actually experience Yharnam to before the hunters became an entity and Gammon is just summoned up. So basically we get to interact with Gammon. That's going to be interesting. Now, is he going to be as powerful as he was when we fought him as the final boss? I sincerely doubt that. But it's pretty interesting to see that we're going to interact with Gammon through a different perspective. But it also tells me that we're also going back in time. So just in my personal opinion, this next scene, we have another tower, or I don't know where we're located at. It looks like we're in Canehurst Castle, but I don't know, it looks different. Like I said, there may be a few things I am missing as I analyze this trailer, but again, it looks like we're inside Canehurst Castle, but we may be in a different building altogether. Now, this is where we begin looking at the different weapons that we will be getting all throughout Yharnam. Obviously, there's a combination between new and old areas, but the weapons is where we're going to be looking at. So the first weapon we're going to be seeing It looks like a hammer. Seriously, it looks like a hammer. But what's interesting about it is that it implements a fire attribute element. In other words, it ignites itself, and then when you smash the enemy, it then automatically hits them with fire attribute. Sort of like how the Tartarus has a thunder element, we have a fire implementing weapon now. So this is pretty cool. The next weapon we got here, we have what looks like it looks like the saw spear, the extended version of the saw cleaver, but it looks like the saw spear, but as he attacks it and he transforms it, it looks like the brutal blade. So in other words, we have another different type of weapon altogether that's sort of like the saw spear and saw cleaver, but it becomes more of a brutal blade. It looks fascinating. I don't know what would be the different forms of this, but I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued with that one. This next weapon, obviously we don't get to see it transform, but it's a bow and it's also a sword. I know that for a fact because after seeing another video, basically where in the Tokyo Game Show they had these individual booths, people were playing the Bloodborne DLC, and one of them was the bow, and it transforms into a sword. So that's what this one is. But to see a bow being used, I have to admit it's interesting, and I can see it work perfectly well with certain enemies like this one right here, but whether it would work well for bosses, I'm not quite sure. But again, it's another weapon of interest to me. The next scene that we have here, we have another weapon that is completely different. We have what looks like a normal long sword, or a buster sword, I think. But what's interesting is that it's sort of like the cane sword, where when you transform it, it becomes a chain sword. We have a bigger version of a chain sword, so that's pretty cool. It's gonna be fun to try it out. This next scene, though, is where it gets really interesting, and I think we're gonna get a further explanation into one of the attributes that we never get to find out within the main game. Obviously, the character that we see here is holding the Beast Claw weapon, which can only be attained through the Chalice dungeons. But for anyone who has actually tried this weapon knows that its transformation weapon only transforms your left hand into a beast weapon. It doesn't do anything else, and apparently if you attack an enemy, your beasthood bar increases, but nothing beyond that happens. So apparently, according to this scene right here, we get to see what happens when that beasthood actually fills up completely, and apparently you transform into a beast. I don't know for how long of a period of time, or if you're just permanently like that. I'm not quite sure. It's going to be interesting to see that. But again, we're finally going to see more into the beasthood attribute, so that's cool. So right here we just have a normal scene with Father Gascoigne when he's into his beast form. So nothing interesting here, but the next scene we have a glimpse of a new boss enemy. Very grotesque looking creature, and we also get to see it fight. Now, I don't know what that transitioned into, why we saw Father Gascoigne, and then we see this creature. But I know for a fact that that creature, his outfit represents that of a cleric. And I know that because the outfit that you wear, or rather as Ludwig wears, he wears the same outfit as well. And according to what I'm looking within the two outfits, this creature is definitely that of a cleric creature as well. So, but to see it in such a deformed state definitely tells me we're going to enter in a realm of just pure and just creepy areas. It's definitely going to make it jumpy, but it's also going to be very thrilling to see such interesting areas, but as well as some decaying areas. Now, this next scene, what's interesting about this scene is that it only shows one, but we see a new Arcana ability, where it looks like he shoots out a meteor from his eyes. So we get to see a new Arcana ability. But I don't know how many more Arcana abilities. Obviously, there's a lot more that they're not showing. They're just showing us a handful of stuff. But from what I can see, this is a lot of stuff. This is going to be a big DLC pack. How big, I don't know, but I'm very excited. And this is just one new ability of the Arcana ability that we're actually seeing. So, this scene right here, obviously it's the fight against the king of Canehurst Castle. I forgot his name. But what's interesting enough is that it's the character that we're seeing is holding the sword. And if you look at the sword blade carefully, it's actually that of the bow weapon that we saw earlier that I talked about, where it can transform into the sword. That's the sword of the bow arrow. That's the sword right there. But what's interesting enough is that on the other side of the character, his left hand, he's holding a shield. Now we know that there's only one shield within the game, and that's the wood plank shield, which is of no use at all. But we actually have another shield, and it looks like a mirror. It looks like a mirror, you know, those fancy mirrors that you see in mansions? That's what it looks like. So obviously we get a new shield that we get to attain. Now, rather it being at Canehurst Castle, I sincerely doubt it. Something tells me that that's more of a purchase item when you enter in the Foul Blood quest, because the armor that he's wearing right now, you can only attain if you join the Foul Bloods and you attain the badge from it. So I'm guessing both the sword and the shield are purchase item when you enter in the Foul Blood. I may be wrong, but that's just what it kind of shows me. That's what it kind of tells me. And knowing From Software's cryptic bullshit, as I put it, it kind of tells me that that's what it's leading up to. The next scene obviously doesn't show much of anything. It just shows Murgo's wet nurse. But the next scene, obviously we're fighting against the beasts from the Forbidden Woods. They're the character within the game where if you talk to him, he'll ask for refuge. You can choose to either tell him to go to Ifoska Clinic or to go to Odin Chapel, or you can attack him and he'll transform into a beast. So while that may not be new, the weapon that the character is holding is new. At first it looks like a spear, but then it transformed into what looks like sort of like a spiked weapon. It's an interesting transformation weapon, and it looks like a fast-paced weapon as well. As you attack it, it also transforms and sort of like hammers it down. Again, it's another weapon that we get to see, and I'm sure that From Software has a lot more weapons that we're not seeing. But again, it's very intriguing. Obviously, we get to see another image of both the character as well as the saw hammer with the new outfit and everything like that, fighting against Fikar and Milla. But the next scene, we see another creature. It looks familiar, but it's also a different creature altogether as well. What it looks like to me, it looks like the cleric beast, but he's in flames. So I don't know if that tells me that we're going to encounter the same bosses, but they have new abilities now, or if that's just a new boss altogether. I don't know. It's just that scene kind of doesn't tell me much of anything. It just tells me that it looks like the cleric beast and that he has fire abilities. Now this last scene right here, first let's take a look at the background. The background where that giant, it looks like a giant clock, right? Well, in my opinion, it looks like that same silhouette that we saw at the sunset or sunrise scene where it overlooms around Yharnam. That's what it kind of looks like. So I'm guessing that tells me that apparently the guy that's in this room is overlooking Yharnam as of right now. So apparently he's in charge of Yharnam, I'm guessing. But I found an image of where it's zoomed up to the character that we're looking within this trailer. And apparently he's just standing there all cocky like. I mean, seriously, he has the look of, come on, come at me if you can. I mean, seriously, that's what he looks like when he's just sitting there. He's just all cocky like, and apparently he has the gall to say, this is my town, bitch, what are you gonna do? The weapon he's holding, though, I don't know what it's supposed to transform into, but I know for a fact that it has to be sort of like a rapier-like sword. But what it transforms into, I don't know. It may be just like that Chikara-like weapon where you wield it and it's a samurai sword, but you can transform it and it implements a blood element and you use both hands with it. It may be that, I don't know. But again, this trailer, it shows a lot. But from what I can fathom up within this trailer, that it tells me that the Old Hunters, it tells me we're going back in time to before the Calamity, to before the Hunter's Dream was even built up, and we find out what goes on, what happens, and everything like that. That's what I'm thinking anyway. Sort of like how in Dark Souls, the DLC pack, the Abyss quest, it goes back in time, but it goes back in time to a different area. So, I mean, it's interesting, but at the same time, we're not given a lot of hints. Just little stuff here and there that kind of gives off an idea as to what the DLC is going to be like. And I can't wait to see how much more it's going to show us. But it's going to be released on a Tuesday, November 24th. So, just to let you know on that. But that's basically my analyst video for the Bloodborne The Old Hunters DLC expansion trailer. Let me know what you think of my analyst. I may have missed a couple of things, but if I did, let me know in the comments. But if I didn't, let me know what you think. If I did a good job, then by all means, thank you for the comment. If I might have missed something, just let me know I missed something. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Take care, guys.